The Professor Podcast.
Here with Dr. George Bournoutian, former professor at Iona College, and you got your PhD at UCLA back in 1976. Basically, Persia, Iran, Armenia, that's your wheelhouse, and a historic move by the United States. And Russia, and the historic move by the United States recognized the Armenian Genocide. This is a significant event.
It's a very significant event because every president since the 50th anniversary, which was 1965, I don't remember who was the president, but Armenians kept on getting politicians, kept on getting donations, kept on sending petitions, and every president said, I'll do it, but then they didn't. They were afraid because Turkey is part of NATO and an ally of United States. So Congress didn't want it. So eventually a lot of congressmen, and Biden promised. Obama did, but Obama didn't use the word genocide. Obama used an Armenian term, a great tragedy or something like that. So then Biden promised and he kept his promise. Of course, now Turkey is very upset and it's threatening to accuse United States of committing genocide against Native Americans.
What exactly? What constitutes a genocide? We know in America the American term with the Nazis against the Jews, 6 million killed. What decides if something is genocide or not?
Genocide was coined by Lemkin, a scholar, when in United Nations in 1948. It's a systematic and purposeful destruction of a native people, like we have in Rwanda. Remember the Rwanda genocide? Anything that has to do like that. Now they're of course accusing Burma of committing the other Rohingya genocide. The genocide is when a government purposely creates a situation where they either kill or destroy a native population from their historic lands. That's what the new definition is by Lemkin in 1948. From then on, UN uses this definition.
And this started in 1915, with the Armenians, later on with the Greeks and the Syrians.
Yes.
Turkey at the time, the Ottoman Empire, as it was known, was called the sick man of Europe. So it was at the decline of the Ottoman Empire. And then what led the Ottomans to decide we don't want Christians anymore. We're not going to be called Ottomans. We're going to be called Turks. Turkey for Turks.
Very good question. What happens is even before World War I, during the wars that the Ottomans had with the Serbs, with the Montenegrins, with the Bulgarians, the Balkan Wars, the Ottomans lost a lot of territory, which was populated by Christians, Bulgaria, Serbia, Montenegro, etc., etc. They began to, and there were many Muslims living there. And after these people became independent, they kicked the Muslims out, and Muslims became refugees, and they all came to Turkey, Ottoman Empire, which is Turkey basically. At that time, it was what it is today, same area. And so they began complaining to the government that we have no place. It's because you have to give us places. And so seeing the writing on the wall that the Armenians especially and the Greeks are the last major minorities left in the area, when World War I began, Armenians in Russia, the Armenians were divided. Some lived in Russia, most of them lived in Ottoman Empire. Armenians in Russia obviously volunteered. By then, Armenians had created political parties, and the Armenian political parties wanted to get reforms. They didn't want to leave. They just wanted to have their own separate units in the Ottoman Empire so they could govern themselves because the Muslims was harassing it. So when war began, the generals of the Turkish army decided that these guys, 1.5 million living right between us and the Russians, are a fifth column. They make us trouble. And also migrants were complaining that they needed place. And Armenians, like the Jews in Germany, were very successful. They had money, they had good positions, they had good houses, so everything worked. It's the same story. Let's get rid of these people. They're traitors anyway. Although most of them, 99% of them were peasants. They had nothing to do with political parties. They were just peasants. And so that's what happened. On April 24th, they removed the Armenian leadership from Istanbul, the Armenian political leadership. They took them on boats and drowned them. And then after that, it began. Systematic killing of the men, driving the women and the children into the desert. On the way, many died, many were raped, many committed suicide. So by the time they reached the Syrian desert, there were very few left. In fact, if you go on YouTube, you'll see the bones are still there. The Armenians have built a little monument there. The bones, if you just scratch the earth, you'll see human bones. So, and the international community recognized that it was a genocide. American Ambassador Morgenthau has written that it was a genocide. He was there in Istanbul. Everybody recognized it. But nothing happened because Turkey became a republic. Russian Armenia became Soviet Armenia. And the Armenians who had escaped, those who had survived, went to Beirut, Syria. Some of them eventually came to the US. They had to start from scratch. Many of them were the only ones left. So they were not in a position to do anything. And it's amazing that nobody questioned it until 1965. In 1965, the 50th anniversary, Armenians in Europe and especially in California, by then, I was in California. I just arrived in 1964 from Iran. I was at UCLA. Armenians in California, there were many Armenians, even today, there are over, God knows how many hundreds of thousands. Armenians, for the first time in the 50th anniversary, came out in the streets and began protesting. And one Armenian went and killed the Turkish consul general. He shot him. You know, that started the whole thing. He shot him. US State Department immediately arrested him. US State Department did not allow him to talk about the genocide during the trial because it was very touchy with the Turks. And so from then on, every year, Armenians all over, in Armenia, they march on April 24th. There's a monument to the martyrs. In Los Angeles, in Paris, wherever there's a huge number of Armenians. And the Turks from then on began denying it. Before, nobody said anything. Before, no Turkish historian wrote about it before the 50th anniversary. Then the denials began. Denials began in three forms. One, the number of dead. It's not 1.5 million, it's maybe 500,000. And it wasn't only Armenians who died, but it was World War I. Many Turkish soldiers died fighting in the war. So it's not only Armenians that suffered, Turks suffered in World War I. But what they don't realize is one is genocide, the other one is war activities. Two, Armenians themselves caused this problem because they were on the Russian side. Very simple. And third, it was not systematic. This is the most important denial. It was not a genocide. They were being removed from the war zone, and unfortunately, atrocities happened, women, children being dragged hundreds of miles by trains or by foot. Atrocities happened, but it was not planned. Nobody planned to create a genocide. These are the three questions now. I hope I gave you the...
And in 1923, my grandparents left Asia Minor as part of the population exchange.
Oh, I know.
I remember hearing stories from my grandmother, how they had a farm and they left their homes with nothing. You can't go anywhere in Turkey. Even I went to Cyprus 2 summers ago. You go on the Turkish side of Cyprus and there's statues of Mustafa Kemal.
Oh, I know. I've been there.
The young Turks.
Yeah.
Yeah, talk about how his rise to power, really. And he was ironically born in Salonika, which was in northern Greece, blonde hair, blue eyes.
Yeah, and
talk about his rise.
He was a mixture of European. his rise was amazing. What happened is he was the one that did not accept the Treaty of Sèvres of 1920, which was imposed on the Ottomans. The government of Istanbul had accepted it. He hadn't. He went to the interior of Turkey, Ankara, created a new army and said, we're gonna not let Turkey disappear into zones, because the Treaty of Sèvres had given Armenia, the Kurds, a lot of land. So Turkey would have been much smaller. But of course, the Europeans, although accepted it, did not do anything, because United States President Wilson, who was very pro-Armenian, got a heart attack, and the Senate, the main senator who did not like Wilson, opposed the American mandate. There was supposed to be an American mandate, American troops going there until everything calms down and the refugees, whatever was survived, came back, but it didn't happen. Soon after, the Turks and the communists made a deal, and Ataturk really saved. Ataturk, that's why he's called the father of the Turks, Ataturk. He really saved Turkey from losing a large number of land and created an army, and he pushed everybody out. He pushed everybody out. The Greeks invaded, but unfortunately they didn't reach, the Greeks attacked, but they didn't succeed. And Ataturk became the hero because he really, I've been to Turkey. There is not a store in Turkey, not a school, not the airport that doesn't have his picture. It's almost like he's Jesus, Muhammad, Moses combined.
Is it more like he's a dictator, like what Saddam Hussein was revered at, or Hitler was revered at?
But he's dead. He's considered the father of the Turks. And then he did a lot of other things. We have to be honest. Turkey became the first Muslim nation to remove the veil. It became the first Muslim nation to use the Christian calendar. To this day, no other Muslim nation uses Christian calendar. Turkey became the first Muslim nation to use the Latin alphabet. They don't have the Arabic alphabet. He did it on purpose. He went against the mullahs, against religion. He wanted to make Turkey a modern country. Okay, and his testament was, make sure, don't get involved in any wars anymore. That's why Turkey in World War II was neutral. The problem with the present government of Erdogan is he's completely changing everything Ataturk did. More mosques, more veils, more Islamic. He's going crazy. And many people are unhappy. That's why he was almost overthrown a few years ago. I was in Istanbul when the coup happened. I was in the hotel sleeping. My wife calls me from here, from New Jersey, and says, are you okay? I said, why? I was sleeping. You woke me up. He said, there is a coup. I said, what coup? Then I heard the tanks. I heard everything. Fortunately, the next day, the day after, the airports opened and I left. But I had taken Iona students with me. But Iona students had gone the day before. They had left the day before, thank God. I was going to stay a day extra because I was going to do some book shopping, etc. They had all gone. So thank God they had gone, because they would have been hysterical.
How should we look at Mustafa Kemal? Murderer or savior of the Turks?
Well, it depends who you ask. He didn't murder much. He didn't have to. He attacked the Greeks and anybody. He made deals with the Europeans, and basically what happened is Turkey made the deals with France and England to keep the Arab lands. That's why Syria, Lebanon, Iraq was under French and British mandates, and Palestine. So basically Turkey said, we got rid of the Armenians. We don't want the Arabs either. We're going to make a Turkey that's homogeneous, except for the Kurds. That's the big problem they have. But what they use, the euphemism is mountain Turks. They don't call them Kurds. They don't allow them to speak their language. And they call it, so the Turks have a big political party. The Turks have all sorts of terrorist activities against the Turks. And now the Turks in Syria, the Kurds in Syria, which are across the border, Turkey is attacking them, as you very well know.
The Turkey's foreign minister said words cannot change or rewrite history. We have nothing to learn from anybody on our own past. Political opportunism is the greatest betrayal to peace and justice. We entirely reject the statement based solely on populism, 1915 events.
Yeah, that means he did. First, it wasn't a genocide. He says, we didn't do it on purpose. Now you are bringing populism. Armenians are convincing the United States. But many nations have accepted it. France, the biggest thing Armenians wanted is US to accept it. Because the others had accepted it. France has accepted it. Diplomats have been called. All sorts of people have accepted it. But when the US says something, it's a little bit bigger. But Mike, it's not going to change anything. I'm sorry to tell you, as a Greek and as Armenian, I mean, you can go till tomorrow morning saying Smyrna, that beautiful city of Smyrna, Izmir today, where the Greeks or Armenians were kicked out, when they basically ran to the ships, those who could survive, and the population changes. My God, they left with nothing, and they had to start from scratch. And this is, it's not going to change. Turkey is not going to give anything back. They're not going to say anything. And some Armenians are naive enough saying, we want reparations. What reparations? You have to find out where the houses were. Well, that's 106 years ago. You're looking for reparations. I suggest, and Armenia has to deal with its big neighbor, Turkey. One way or the other, Turks have locked all the exits, all the railroads. Armenia is landlocked, basically. The only road it has is to Iran, which is very interesting. And Armenia does very well with Iran, but it's important for Armenians to be able to sell things to Turkey or to buy things from Turkey. I mean, I'm not saying forgive and forget, but they have to have some kind of a dialogue. Without the dialogue, it's not going to work.
When you look at them, it's like America has the original sin with the Indians, and we're seeing what's happening now, finally acknowledging the sins against the African Americans.
Yes,
that's our original sin.
Definitely.
I think a lot of people feel like if Turkey would at least acknowledge what they did, and acknowledge that, you know what, this wasn't right, instead of pretending it didn't exist.
It would be the smartest thing to do. If a Turkish smart government said, look, the Germans did it. The Germans apologized to the Jews. It was a bad thing we did. Now, the Germans paid reparations because it was much later and they were awful. Records were there. The names were there. Armenians don't have the names and records as good as the Holocaust because the Germans were very methodical. But it would be the best thing they do. First, Europe will applaud them. Second, they will gain the respect of all sorts of people saying, look, it happened. We are sorry. It wasn't meant to happen. It will really create a fantastic thing for the Turks. But they should do it because Turkish Airlines does fly to Greece. I have flown Greek Airlines to Istanbul. So at least with Greece, well, because Greece is a member of NATO also, at least with Greece, they have kind of, although they are constantly pushing Greece, trying to get oil from the Aegean, they're getting all sorts of pretenses against the sea, against the Greek areas. But I don't know how serious that is, but they have a very good army. They have a very good army. US has given them everything. And now Azerbaijanis bought with the help of Turkey. Azerbaijanis bought Israeli drones, which recently had a war between Armenia and Azerbaijan, but it has nothing to do with this. That's the book I'm working on now.
So what do you think the future is between Greece, Turkey, and Armenia? Do you think there'll just be smoke because of the ancient rivalry, or do you think sometime something might come to a head?
It all depends on the government of Turkey, because they are the ones that first have to say it. Because, we have records of everything, we have diplomats, we have books. Once the Turks are smart enough to realize it's much better economically to, to have tourism, more tourism, etc., it will work. It will work because a lot of Greeks will love to go to Turkey. Smyrna and Istanbul is practically a Greek city. When you go there, the churches, etc., of course, they have destroyed or covered some of the churches. But it would be that I've been there with tourists. I took a group of tourists to the places of the genocide. I took a whole group of American tourists. And amazingly, the hotels were very nice. They knew we were Armenian. We went to all the sites. Nobody said anything except one place. The old Armenian capital, which is at the border, Ani. I can read a little bit Turkish. I read it says Georgian capital. I called the guard there and the guide. I said, let's go to that church. I said, these are Armenian letters. I said, why do you put it's a Georgian capital? Okay, it's an Armenian capital. And in another place, they had removed the cross from the church and said it's a mosque. It's not an Armenian church. There was a little Kurdish boy. I speak Persian, which is close to Turkish. I asked him, whose church is this? He says, it's an Armenian church. The Kurdish boy knew.
It sounds like Istanbul was a real, international city.
It was.
It's a shame it can't recognize all the religions and cultures that were there before.
Yeah, they don't call it Greek or Byzantine. They now call it a Turkish city. I mean, they don't want to call it Greek at all. And it's very strange because the evidence is there and it's sad, but they are not taking care of the antiquities. Outside, behind Hagia Sophia, they have opened markets selling junks. The hotels are rising higher than UNESCO allows. They're a UNESCO city. The UNESCO is complaining that you are not following the UNESCO guidelines of building and covering the view of the historical monuments. They don't care.